everyone, Thunderbolt 1000 Siren Productions here. It's that time of year again, time for me to answer your questions. Now, I do want to apologize for it taking so long to get to your questions. My video schedule went totally out the window ever since my computer fried its motherboard back in June, so it was a miracle the Doodlebug disaster documentary was released on time. But now, I think it's time to answer the internet's burning questions about me. All the questions will be from the announcement video released quite a few months ago, and there was more than 400 comments posted on that video. Jeez. Obviously, not everyone's questions will be featured, as editing these videos are a pain, and there are a lot of copies or repeats. But before we get started, let me address some of the more frequently asked questions, whether they were in the comments section of the video or not. Are you still making the train documentaries? Yes, indeed. I'm not fully set on the ones I want to do for the next couple of months, but I know I plan to remaster the Chase Maryland collision documentary to celebrate doing these videos for 5 years. The original will remain up, however, for old time's sake, and so you can compare how far I've come over the years. Do you plan to see 611 to Strasbourg? Well, I've already visited her in July. In fact, some of the footage from that trip was used in a recent music video I put up, so stay tuned. But I do plan to go back in October. Details will be released on Patreon in a couple of weeks. What equipment do you use to make your videos? Well, here's a list of cameras and software I use for my videos, and if there's any changes, I will post them on my community tab. Okay, with that all out of the way, let's get started. Frustrated Cat asks, what inspired you to create your videos? Well, all the videos I make come from outside sources, except for the railfan ones, obviously. For the documentaries, they were inspired by another video I saw that documented the Wichita Falls, Texas tornado of 1979. That video, despite being so old, is still up on YouTube, believe it or not. I'll leave a link in the description. And I always wanted to do a similar video like that, only on a train wreck. So the 30th anniversary of the Chase Maryland incident was coming up, and I released a video on it. Now granted, I didn't really intend for it to become a series. I originally planned for it to be a one-off video and then just go on with life. But people seemed to really enjoy the Chase Maryland documentary and demanded more content just like it, so I released another documentary, this time on the Big Bayou incident. People liked that, they wanted more, so that became a series over time. So it's really thanks to you guys that video series became possible, so thank you. Why do you do in your spare time? Well, I'm sure he means what do you do in your spare time? Well, if it isn't making videos such as this, I'm either A, out in the field rail fanning, or B, being a complete lazy bum back home. But yeah, I really do not get that much spare time, so some of that resting is kind of worth it. What is your favorite train? Well, I'm sure he means my favorite locomotive. In that case, that is the Pennsylvania Railroad K4 steam engine. Noah E. asks, what is your favorite New York Central unit? Now, I know I'm going to rustle a few jimmies for saying this, but I'm not really a big fan of the New York Central. But if I had to choose a favorite, it would probably be the Niagaras, just for their design looks. They look pretty nice, and they have quite an interesting history behind them, including how one was used as a stationary boiler at a pickle factory of all things. Also, were you alive during 9/11? Yes, I was. As a 1-year-old baby. No, but the funny thing is, me and my parents have been traveling on airlines all across the globe at the time. We first went from Philly to London, then to Rome, and then back to Philly again. And this was just mere months before 9/11 happened, if memory serves me right. I don't know when exactly it happened. My mom probably knows, but either way, it's kind of scary to think that I could have ended up on one of those planes that went hijacked. So, yeah, there's that. Lyric of 300 asks, what is your favorite diesel locomotive? Well, that would have to be the GP7 or GP9 from EMD. That simple, basic look is kind of appealing to me, and There's no sound like the unturbocharged EMD 567s. What is your favorite electric locomotive? Da Gigi Juan. That joke never gets old. Are you ready for summer vacation? Well, by the time this video is being uploaded, yeah, summer vacation's almost over, but to put it simply, I had a good summer vacation. Warthog23 asks, do you think the F-59 PHIs retired too soon? Kinda. How many rare museums have you been to? So far, only 2. The Rare Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, and the Baltimore, Ohio Rare Museum in Baltimore. Both are really good museums. Check them out if you have the time. What locomotive, steam or diesel, did you always wanted to see? Well, definitely the Pennsylvania Railroad K4, namely 1361 whenever it's finished. Metal asks, which documentary do you think you are most proud/satisfied with? That used to belong to the Hinton train collision documentary. That is, until the Nepiziget documentary was released. I think I said the name right this time. But yeah, the audio from the actual radio transmissions that day really adds on to that video, and the simulation, although laggy in some spots, was really, really good. So I think I really peaked during that video. The Doodlebug disaster is really close behind as well. That was also a pretty good production. What is your favorite Japanese steam locomotive? Probably the D51 Mikados. I just like the look of them, and it's also the basis of Hero in Thomas and Friends. What I also find hilarious is, while Hero's basis is the Japanese D51, his livery is based on the Soviet Railway D51. What is your favorite locomotive that you have caught that isn't heritage, special interest, or fallen flag locomotive? Ooh, man, that's kind of a tough one to choose. I really can't narrow it down on one favorite, but one of my favorites is probably NS SD60E 6967, mainly because of that monster RS5T it holds. Yeah, SD60Es suck and all, but man, that horn was just There's also GP38-3 5827, again for its horn. I'm not exactly sure what type it is, but it's a very unique sound, and since the locomotive stays around our area most of the time, you grow slightly accustomed to it. And I would say NS3001, the GP40, but the main reason I like that is because of its fallen flag history, since it was a Reading unit, then it went to Conrail, and now it's with NS, so I guess that doesn't count, but I'm just gonna mention it anyway because bleh. Yeah, that's my reasoning, just bleh. MOZT asks, can you do a history of the Morris County Central Railroad? I really don't know much about the railroad, so I can't really do a video of it just yet. But I may look forward to it sometime in the future. We'll see what happens. Joshua Robertson asks, what is your favorite steam locomotive? Well, I've already mentioned one, the Pennsylvania Railroad K4, but another favorite of mine is the Reading T1s, or T-Hogs. Christopher Jamieson, hope I pronounced that right, he asked, what is your favorite locomotive? I've already mentioned 2 of them, the Penn ZK4 and the Reading T1, as well as the GP7/GP9s. So yet another favorite of mine would be the M1 class from the Pennsylvania Railroad. What is the nearest railroad you live? The nearest rail line from where I'm sitting right now at home would have to be the Norfolk Southern Harrisburg line, namely Abrams Yard, which is literally right across the river from where I live, so I hear everything going on from that yard from my place. Union Pacific 1982 Productions asks, which appearance of 282-4960 do you prefer, CB&Q or Grand Canyon Railway? I'm gonna have to go with the CB&Q appearance, as no offense, but there is way too many steam engines where the headlight is on the smoke box. I mean, don't get me wrong, they look nice and all, but there's just so many of them that it gets kind of boring. So this kind of dress where the headlight is near the funnel, that's kind of my forte, and it's not as common, so there you go. Favorite diesels from EMD, GE, Alco, and Baldwin. Well, for EMD, I already mentioned it. It was the GP7s and GP9s. They're honestly kind of the same thing. But another favorite of mine from EMD would probably be the GP30. For General Electric, that is the U34CH. For Alco, the C424. And Baldwin, the RF16 Shark Noses. FNAFy L asks, do you know you've inspired many people to do their own crash documentaries? Yes, I'm well aware of that. Unfortunately, some people do it without my permission, but thankfully a lot of them have gotten my permission, and quite a number of them have done pretty well. I know there was this one YouTuber, I feel like a jerk for forgetting his name, but he wanted to do videos based off of my documentaries, except on aircraft accidents. And when I looked up his very first video, his very first documentary on one of those plane crashes, the video work was just spot on. I mean, it was kind of similar to how I do my videos, but either way, I thought it was pretty good. And then there's, of course, the well-known people that do videos based off of my work, namely Railfan K Productions, who releases them on a schedule I could only dream of, and of course Ryan's Colorado Rail Productions, who's also helped me on some of my videos. So yeah, shout out to the both of them. They do some pretty good work. As well as the unmentioned one that I totally forget the name of. I feel like a jerk for forgetting. Oh. What is your favorite type of locomotive? Honestly, I'm more of a steam guy, but I like my diesels here and there every once in a while. And of course, I'm biased to like electric trains since, well, from where I live, I'm surrounded by them. Do you plan on doing memes? Mainly sneaking them in certain videos, such as the Q&A announcement video where I did the Murder in Savannah meme, and it just shows 1065 plowing into that tractor trailer. Somebody sent that to me on Discord a long time ago, and I lost the original copy, but I happened to find, well, I actually did have the original copy. It was on my hard drive, but I don't know who made it originally, but it was just so good that I just had to feature it. So you'll see them sprinkled in certain videos, just not all the time. Brick Lover 844 asks, do you like the Colbertdale Railroad? I love the Colbertdale Railroad. They've been doing quite a lot of work, and they're quite a promising new player, especially considering they're the only tourist railroad in Montgomery County. All the other tourist railroads I know of are in places like Bucks, Berks County, and then of course you got, the Lehigh Valley area where the Redigan Northern roams. So yeah, Colbertdale has a special place in my heart because, before they were formed, the closest tourist railroad we had was New Hope. So having Colbertdale formed, it's really nice to know how close to home they are. Amtrak Man 321 asks, what's your rarest find? Well, at the moment, it's probably that GP60 I found at Juniata Shops for my recent trip to Altoona. Stay tuned, I'll upload videos about that in the future. Wizard Ian asks, do you think more railroads in the United States should be electrified than just the Northeast Corridor? Well, yes, but at the same time, the American rail infrastructure is just not set up for both electrified main lines and, of course, high-speed rail in general. What is your favorite locomotive? Well, I've already mentioned 3 or 4 of them, but another favorite of mine would probably have to be the Reading G-Class Pacifics, which are unfortunately extinct. Do you think more high-speed rail should be built in the US? Again, the American rail infrastructure is just not set up for it at all. And with the current government administration, I don't think it's taking off the ground anytime soon. There was also, don't forget, that high-speed rail act that was enacted in California, and to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't be surprised if that stalled in one way or another, because they've been talking about that for a long time, and just I've not heard it get any further off the ground other than setting toasters to Caltrain to test, electric power down there. So we'll see what happens, but I do not have high hopes at all. Ryano asks, what is your favorite passenger railroad in California? I'm gonna have to go with Metrolink. What is your favorite passenger locomotive? If I had to choose one, it'd probably be the Silverliner 4s that we have on SEPTA. I mean, they count as locomotives because of traction motors, cabs, and all that jazz. Are you planning on visiting the New York Central subway? Not at the moment, but we'll see what happens. I'll Go Mazed, Algudo, and other stuff asks, what are your thoughts on the Pennsylvania Railroad S16446? She thick. She may not be practical, but she do be thick though. She was very thick. How old are you turning this year? Well, I've already turned that said age. 21? I hate that joke. Hey, it's Huts ass. Best railroad paint scheme. Probably the SPSF Kodachrome livery. It just looks really, really sharp. Especially with the number board idea, because most number boards on locomotives are always that same old black and white, black background, white numbers and stuff like that. But for them to break that continuity with the red background and the white numbers, that actually looks really, really cool. It is just a shame that the merger just totally failed because of the government failing us all. As they always do. The Early Birth asks, Thunderbolt, what are your thoughts on the GG1 electric locomotives and their history? The GG1 electrics are definitely one of the best locomotives we've had in the Eastern Seaboard, and I've even talked with old Amtrak hands, like when I was rail fanning Exton when it was in the middle of construction. They all said the GG1 was the best locomotive they ever had. It could do pretty much anything, like fast intercity freight, no problem. High-speed passenger, no problem. Like, it could do anything. The only thing that really did them in the end was just their frames were rotting from being so old. So, that's why the AEM-7s eventually took their place, and I think the AEM-7 was a worthy locomotive for the GG1 to pass down the torch to, so to speak. Will you ever do another Engines of series? Well, I did mention that I plan to release Engines of the Pennsylvania Railroad, so yeah, stay tuned. I'm not sure how I'm going to release them just yet, but we'll see what happens. Max Rich asks, do you prefer Trains A New Era or Trains 19 better? At the moment, Tane wins for me because it is way more stable and better to work with. When I tried working with 19 for the Tenga video, you could easily see the video recorder and the computer were really struggling to film in a smooth way. It just wasn't gonna work. So until time passes, Trains 19 is gonna be on the back burner for me, but who knows? If they stabilize it in the future, we'll see what happens. But at the moment, I'm going to stick with Trains A New Era because it is just way more easier to work with. What British engine do you like? I like quite a bit of British locomotives. For example, the Intercity 125s, also known as the British Rail Class 43s, the Lancashire and Yorkshire Class 28s, and even the S1s, the old ugly ducklings, so to speak. There's some charm in them, so yeah, I like quite a bit of British locomotives. And of course, we cannot forget the old LNER A1s. What train crash do you want to do next? At the moment, I don't know. We'll just see what happens. Dan Railbro asks, what siren company in your opinion makes the worst tornado siren? Federal Signal, Alerting Computers of America, or WLAN? None of those, actually. That would be ATI. Those Chinese speaker sirens are just a joke. When a friggin' 1950s era chopper-driven siren from Federal Signal can overpower a Chinese speaker siren, yeah. I don't need to say anymore. Ugh. The train spotter from Tarunga, I can't pronounce that, I'm sorry. Have you any thoughts on the NS-AC44C6CF locomotive, aka 8520? Well, from what I've heard, that locomotive was a complete disaster, and NS quickly got rid of it at some point. I think they gave it to Knoxville Locomotive Works or something like that, but yeah, I heard that engine was a piece of junk and was rarely outside the Altoona area without breaking down. In your opinion, what is the rarest, most interesting locomotive or train movement you ever filmed? I filmed most of the so-called rare movements on my channel are really, to be honest, more or less stuff you don't see anymore. Like, for example, that stone train that me and a bunch of buddies caught on the High Line back in Philly not long after Rail Rodeo. I mean, yeah, that's rare. They don't usually go up there as far as I know, but honestly, the power on that train as well, they were like two SD60Is or Ms. Memory escapes me, but yeah, most rare catches like that are just stuff you don't see anymore. The XAvid1 asks, what is your favorite SEPTA locomotive? Again, that's the Silverliner 4s. Could you do a documentary on the Tay Bridge disaster this December? Well, we'll see what happens. I definitely will consider that. What's your personal favorite of the train wreck documentaries you have made? I've mentioned it earlier, that is definitely the Nebizigit Runaway documentary. Again, I really hope I pronounced that right, because I got some flack for not saying it right. Timo plays Roblox asks, what is your favorite locomotive? I've already listed several favorites of mine, but if I had to choose another favorite, it would have to be the GP38-2s. Can you do a video of a Dutch train crash from the Netherlands? I might at some point, so stay tuned. I know I'm gonna butcher the names of the locations even worse, but we'll see. What is your subscriber goal for the end of the year? The big old 100,000 subscribers, and we're getting very, very close to that goal, so stay tuned. Engineer Pat 5290 asks, favorite railroad museum? Well, it's a no-brainer, the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania at Strasburg. What is your favorite subject in school? I was more of a history guy in high school, or school in general, so if I had to choose a favorite subject, it'd definitely be history. Especially if the time period is somewhere between World War I up to present day. Especially World War II. World War II is like, my strong suit when it comes to history. What are your plans for rail fanning for this year? One of them was already satisfied, and that was visiting the Horseshoe Curve. Stay tuned, I'll have videos of that uploaded at some point. But other goals definitely are to expand my horizons, so to speak, like go to different locations, such as Binghamton, New York, that sort of thing. So, yeah. The Vintage Lover asks, what steam locomotive would you like to see once its restoration is complete? At the moment, that would have to be Reading T1 2102. They're almost done. They're just working on the cab as well as the tender, but I really cannot wait for that locomotive to finally be under steam again. What steam locomotive would you like to see running again despite never running under steam? Well, that would probably be K4 3750, because I know it's been forever since it's ever been steamed up, but, and there's like no chance it will ever steam up, but one can dream. One can dream. Can we be twins? Let me just put it to you straight. I have thousands of internet friends and like a handful of real life friends. New Oban Productions asks, what's your opinion on the Caledonian Railway steam locomotives? Well, I like the Caledonian steam locomotives. Sorry for that horrible Scottish accent. I couldn't resist. But yeah, when I was researching the Quinton's Hill incident, I did a little research on not just the incident, but also the history of the Caledonian Railway, and it was a very interesting journey. Griffin Rails asks, best/worst SEPTA line? it's really hard to pick a favorite SEPTA line, especially considering the current schedule they have going on right now. But if I had to choose a favorite, the one I had the most memories of, it would probably be on either the Maniac Norristown line, obviously, or the Paoli Thorndale. Mainly the Paoli Thorndale because back in the day, that's when most of the push-pull sets would be running for the afternoon rush, which made that said line very, very popular with rail fans when the AEM7s were about to be retired. Plus, there was also the AEM7 excursion that I took a part of on SEPTA, which was a lot of fun. As for the worst, probably the Kingwood line. Back at like several years ago, I wanted to railfan every single SEPTA line, but I kind of stopped when I was around R6 because the Kingwood line is such a hard line to railfan. I don't even think it's running at the moment because of COVID, but when they do run, it's like almost an hour in between trains, and even so, it's just a single car Silverliner 4 or 5 running by itself. Not much potential there, but we'll see. I might visit it when this COVID thing doesn't exist anymore, so we'll see what happens. Have you ever abandoned a documentary, and if so, what one? That is a big yes, because oftentimes the projects will stall in one way or another, whether it's due to scheduling, not having enough time. There's just way too many reasons to count, and a lot of them that I have promoted, like for example the North Wales collision or the Market Frankfurt derailment, were also canceled due to lack of information and resources. Even the Murdoch incident was one I had to abandon because, yeah, it's a well-known incident, but all the information I find on Murdoch is just on the explosion. They don't tell. All I know is it was a B&O train. It derailed, obviously, and then exploded with tankers full of LPG and even isobutane. But the thing that pissed me off was I never even found the cause of why the train derailed in the first place. Kind of an interesting, thing to look up when you're trying to make a video as to how the accident happened. So, yeah. I've always wanted to do that, the Murdoch, Illinois derailment, but since there's like barely any information available, it's like, what's the point? You've got nothing to work with. Worst heritage railway in your opinion? In my opinion, that would probably be Gettysburg. I've already made a video explaining why, so go check it out. Joey the Cat asks, thoughts on Cotton Belt 819 not returning to excursion service? It is tragic, but as the old saying goes, nothing lasts forever. Andrew Lieb asks, how long did it take for you to release a new wreck documentary video on average? Well, here's the thing. It really depends on how famous the incident is, how much information is available, as well as outside life and availability. So, on average, it sometimes takes at least 2 to 3 weeks to fully complete. And like I said, that always changes, and I know the more info I have to say about the incident, the longer the video is. Editing is probably the longest part about making the video, other than research. So, yeah, on average, it's usually about a couple of weeks, but like I said, that always changes due to outside life and available time. So, yeah, there you go. Will you catch a video of Norfolk and Western 611 returning to the Strasburg Railroad in 2021? Please refer to earlier in the video. Will you make a documentary video on the 1989 Durango and Silverton Roundhouse fire? You've piqued my interests. I'll have to look that up. I've always wanted to do the Roundhouse fire that the chassis suffered, which severely damaged T1-2101, but we'll have to see what happens. Mr. Brest asks, how do we submit video topics? Well, it's pretty simple. You just leave your suggestion down below in the comments. And if you also happen to be in my Discord server, I have a channel dedicated to video suggestions that you can leave right in there. And if you already aren't a part of the Discord server, there's a link in the description. BNSF Brakeman Boy 2926 asks, hello Thunderbolt, I enjoy your channel, and so I have 2 questions. Well, first off, thank you very much. How are you today? Just hanging in there, not melting from the hot summer sun here in eastern PA, or even worse, getting flooded out by these thunderstorms. Do you play any trains games? And if not, will you give them a try? I have. I first started with 12, which everybody knows at some points can be a big stress boat. For me, it was mainly the content manager, probably the worst I ever had to work with. Trains A New Era is my primary one, and it works pretty well. 19, on the other hand, it's promising, but every time I've used it, it's been problematic, so yeah. Alex Sullivan asks, are you going to do a documentary on the Ashtabula train disaster? I have gotten requests for that in the past, so stay tuned, we'll see what happens. Redding Rails asks, how much did you hate the snoot nose every time it avoided you? Okay, I know where he's getting at with this one. So, 3448 is one of two SD40-2 snoot noses that NS has on its fleet. A while ago, it was in Allentown. It was being put on locals based out of Allentown. The first time I get word of it, it was leading H44, the Allentown to Abrams local. But I had to skip getting it because I was all over the Reading and Northern, getting a coal train as well as all the other traffic. Then I see all across the Facebook groups I'm in that it was put on H11 and there were so many rail fans going after it, and I was like, oh, screw me. So I figured that, you know what, when I get the chance, I'll go out and get it. The first day, nothing. It got put on H66 in the middle of the night the day I went out, and yeah, I never saw it. But I did get 6349 just weeks before it would hit a dump truck on the cement secondary leading on NS H75, so there you go, that was something. The second day, it was on H75, which is a local that goes from Allentown and goes down the cement secondary. That train leaves very early in the morning, so there was no chance I was going to get it leading coming out. So I thought, you know what, I'll just wait for it to come back. You know, simple as that. So I hopped around the Reading line all morning into the afternoon until getting down to Bethlehem. So after getting H65, I hear what sounds like a P5 blasting a lot, and I'm like thinking, it must be H65 doing brake tests. But then it gets louder and louder, like a crossing sequence, and I'm like, wait a minute. Sure enough, it was already going through Bethlehem, trying to sneak behind my back. So the only other chance I would get of seeing it is right by the old hump yard, what used to be the hump, down in Allentown. Thankfully, he was going slow, and I got there just in time. But then I get a text from a friend of mine named Andrew, who might actually own the Reading Rails, the channel that I'm talking about here, so who knows. He texts me and says, oh yeah, it's on H11, and I'm like, the one day I'm not out, and it's on the train I've been waiting for it to see. So I rush out from my house to Macungie, and sure enough, it had not left Albertus yet, so I had time to set up, and I finally got it leading. And then it started raining. Right after, not long after we had saw it, and there were storms on the way, so yeah, I got the heck out of there later on. So yeah, it was a pain trying to go out for it, but at least I got it in the end of it, because a couple months later it would disappear and go out on 19G, and who knows where the heck it is now, probably Georgia or something. How much do you miss the 80 Max? Not really that much, as I only saw two of them. 7207, which was a DPU on 39G, and 7215, which was leading NS18N. I kind of wish I got to see more of them, but you can't have everything, can you? What was your first train documentary? I'm sure he means the wreck documentaries, which in that case, it would be the Chase, Maryland incident. Atomic Crow asks, how did you learn so much about railroads and locomotives? Well, ever since I was a kid, I was into trains, and I've always wanted to learn more and more about them, so thanks to the good old internet and the early days of YouTube, I began to study and learn more about the history of trains and what makes them tick, and of course, Going out to tourist railroads quite often helped reinforce this, so yeah. What got you into trains? Combination of frequent trips to the New Hope and Ivyland and Thomas the Tank Engine, namely the classic series 1 through 4. So that's what got me hooked on trains from the start. Train Dude 579 asks, if you could save one steam train in Pennsylvania, which one would it be? Probably the extinct G-Class Pacifics. It's kind of a shame such a well-known locomotive, especially the streamlined Crusaders, never got a chance to see preservation. ASKL 246 asks, what is your favorite freight car type? Probably the autoracks, because I always find it cool all the different railroads labeled on the side of them. Of course, boxcars have the same effect as well, but autoracks, I don't know, it's just something about their look and all the railroad logos you see on the side of them, especially considering the rare ones such as Conrail or heck even Southern Pacific if you really get lucky. Some of those older cars are usually seen through my area. Also, boxcars or vans? Boxcars, definitely, as an American. I've heard both terminologies, but I'm more used to the first one. T1 Productions asks, what is your favorite Thomas and Friends episode? That's kind of a hard choice, as I really like a lot of the episodes, and most of my favorites are usually on par with everyone else's. But I will say some of my favorites include Toby and the Flood for the epic music score, Duncan Gets Spooked for pretty much the same reason, and the Diesel and Duck trilogy. It's just something about Diesel's scheming evil character that always fascinated me as a kid, as well as that really low voice that Ringo Starr gave him. It just, it gives me the chills. Have you ever visited Colorado? My mom says she took me to Colorado when I was like really young, but yeah, I don't really remember if I have or not, but my mom says I have, so I guess. Favorite locomotive and why? I've already listed several of my favorites already, but I might as well say why the Penn-Z K4 is my favorite steam locomotive of all time. It's mainly because of the unique design, the bell pair firebox, which was a standard feature on a lot of Penn-Z steam locomotives at the time, which was actually inspired by the British, the 80-inch drive wheels, and of course, just how fast you could push those engines. Like, they could easily attain like 80 to 100 miles an hour without raising a sweat. So, yeah. Those are my main reasons why the Penn-Z K4 is my favorite. Of course, location bias also kind of exists as well, because I do live in Pennsylvania, so there's that. But yeah, mainly the firebox design and the huge 80-inch drivers. Pablo Andres Torbilo Mongola. Oh man, I really screwed that pronunciation up. My dumb questions. Hey, as long as I can answer the questions humorously, it doesn't matter if they're dumb. Did you like Thomas and Friends? Well, I grew up with the show as a kid, so obviously yes. Would you like to visit Barry's Scrapyard? Probably not. I don't even know if it exists right now. Would you like to have a real train? Definitely, but I know my financial status would not support it. Railfan and Railroad Productions asks, opinions on Norfolk and Western 611 in general? I really like the locomotive. I mean, it is sort of overrated with all the attention it gets, but just the locomotive's looks alone are just amazing. When you see it, it's like watching a torpedo on land just thundering down the line, blowing that ghostly Hancock 3-chime whistle. It's just everything about it is just absolutely stunning. And I will say this, the roller-bearing drive wheels are just amazing. I've always been fascinated by the connecting rods on the 611. Jet the Hawk 1994 asks, if you could go back in time to witness one of the wrecks in your documentary series, which would you pick? I don't know. How about none of them? Because they're all horrifying in their own ways. Though, on second thought, witnessing the Crazy 8 incident would be kind of funny. How's restoration of the Lansdale Freight House coming? So far, we've done a lot of the main physical work so far. The old wooden floor that was rotting away has been removed, as well as the concrete layer on top of it, and we're just waiting for some contractors to help us out with some of the other jobs. But other than that, while we are a bit behind schedule, we are definitely looking forward to the finished product. If you want to learn more about the progress on the freight house, please check out Discover Lansdale's website. I'll leave a link down below in the description if you're interested. What extinct locomotive class do you want to see come back into existence? Again, it's the Reading G-class Pacifics. It's kind of a shame they never got the chance. Though another extinct locomotive I would like to see preserved would have definitely be the Western Maryland Potomacs. They just have a look compared to other 484s that you don't usually see. Maybe it's just the weird placement of the bell, but that's just me. Peter Rosenquist asks, how did you come to know about NNW 611 and why is she one of your favorites? Well, to be honest, she's not a favorite of mine compared to other 484s, but she's up there. But how I found out about 611 was just when I was a young kid just surfing around YouTube. I stumbled upon a documentary on both 1218 and 611, and I was always fascinated by the two locomotives. 1218 because of that ghostly like single chime whistle, and 611 for just, again, the reasons I mentioned earlier. A lot of the videos I found were usually in the 1992 realm, when the locomotive was in definitely better times compared to now because of COVID and, you know, not many places for the locomotive to do excursions other than Strasbourg. But yeah, mainly from the good old YouTube, back when it actually was YouTube and not Google. That's how I knew about 611. What are your thoughts on CP and CN making attempts to acquire KCS? I did hear that CP was the original contender to get KCS, but now with CN and CP just beating the crap out of each other, it's just turned into just one big pissing contest. But from what I've heard, CN is ahead of CP in the bidding bits, but at this point, who really knows? And I think it's about time KCS gets put out of their misery just getting, you know, stuck in the middle between two angry Canadians. JV asks, what is your favorite locomotive model that still roams Class 1 rails today? Either the SD70Ms that still roam Union Pacific, or the SD70 Aces we have on Norfolk Southern. What is your favorite Class 1 railroad paint scheme? To be honest, I really don't have a favorite Class 1 paint scheme. You know, at least for the ones that we still have right now. I mean, CSX is at least colorful and isn't the plain old black. I mean, Union Pacific and BNSF are like that too. But if I had to choose one, it'd probably be BNSF H2, because it's kind of a nice homage to the railroads that formed BNSF in the first place, namely Santa Fe, but whatever. What is your favorite locomotive horn? I have several favorites. These include the Leslie S2M, First Gen K5LA, Nathan P01235, as well as the Nathan K3Ls and K3s. Especially if they're Canadian tuned. Jake Fussell asks, what is your favorite electric locomotive? Well, I've already mentioned the GG1s, but another favorite of mine is the E60s. Yeah, they were flawed, but I just like the look of them as well as their horns. What is your favorite tank in War Thunder? The KV2, and it doesn't matter if it's the 1939 or the 1940 variant, I like both of them. What is your least favorite steam locomotive? I kind of don't really have a least favorite steam locomotive, so I can't really pick. Aiden Amaya asks, ever witnessed a live train crash? Thankfully, no. Ever ridden in the cab of a train? Yes, quite a few times. I've ridden in the cab of New Hope and Ivyland steam locomotive, number 40. I've also been in the cab of 2 diesels as of the making of this video. Colbrookdale 5128, which is a GP38 high hood, and their GP10 7236. Ever got yelled at for rail fanning? Not really. I mean, yeah, you get the occasional oversensitive cop or other idiots that you run into when rail fanning, but it doesn't happen that much, thankfully. Wisconsin Central Productions asks, what or who inspired you to do YouTube? Well, honestly, after watching, all kinds of... When I first discovered YouTube back in the early 2000s, I was always surprised at all the kind of videos you could find of people passionate about their own different things, whether it was trains, cats, whatever. And the users you see on screen right now were definitely some of the few YouTubers that led me to create my own channel. NS or CSX? It's kinda hard to choose as they both are going down the toilet, but I'm gonna have to go with NS because at least they went through the trouble of making heritage units to please the foamers. So, yeah. How are you today? Just hanging in there with all this heat and storms and all that jazz you get every summer up here in the Northeast. Amtrak 506 asks, if you could bring one fallen flag back, what would it be and why? Definitely the Pennsylvania Railroad, for obvious reasons. They knew how to run a railroad. Reading too, but the Reading and Northern's kind of already filling in their shoes as far as I'm concerned, so I'm sure they'd be proud. Skylar Soto asks, why does this question exist? Because you made it. Albert Ding asks, what toy trains have you had in the past? Power type, brand, and size, and which ones do you still have today? Well, as I was growing up, I had a plethora of Thomas & Friends toys, take along, wooden, that sort of thing. And a lot of them, which I still own, are actually very valuable, so I've still kept them as of today. As for HO stuff, I have a lot of different kinds of HO brands of like locomotives, rolling stock, mainly from Northeast Roads, so there's that. Have you ever been on Day Out with Thomas excursions? When I was a kid, whenever the Day Out with Thomas events would come around, my parents would try and take me out to one of these, and I think I was at the very first Day Out with Thomas event when they started using the CGI face. I can't remember, but that's my experience. What was your favorite 440 steam locomotive, whether it was American or overseas? Pennsylvania Railroad 1223. Hello, Dolly! Blue J73 asks, what's your opinion on Thomas and its current state? It's really a shame that Mattel's lack of understanding and just lack of care in general led to the show being canceled. I heard there's another show that's related to Thomas and Friends that they're trying to make, like a spin-off or something like that, but I haven't heard much. I heard it sucks though, but yeah, it's really a shame that the show died. But all good things have to come to an end. Lightbulb Productions asks, will you be using trains more often in your documentaries? Definitely, as with my new computer, it handles trains much more smoothly, even on medium graphics. And the new recording software I use, Fraps, I think that's how you pronounce it, it definitely runs much, much better. Yeah, the files are a little bit bigger and are usually a pain, but at least they work. So yeah, expect more trains content to be used in my documentaries in the future. What are your thoughts on Season 25 of Thomas? Season 25? I thought they canceled it after Season 24. Have you heard of Sodor Fallout? Yes, and I want to bleach my eyes out. Terrier82 Box Hill asks, if you could own your own steam locomotive, what class would it be and what would you name it? Definitely a Pennsylvania Railroad K4, and I'm not sure what name I would give it. Maybe just a generic one like Tom or something like that. I don't know. D Nationality 81 asks, will you ever revisit Pennsylvania Northeastern Railroad C39-8 8212? I have revisited it quite often ever since my last video on it. but there's really not much to see about that locomotive anymore, as it's merely just a backup now for W230, and which is the midnight train that you used to see it on. So there's really not much to go out for anymore regarding that locomotive. Can you do the Walt Disney World 2009 monorail crash? I'll have to look into that, and since it's been requested here and there every so often, I'll definitely do some research. What is your favorite SEPTA engine? Well, I've already mentioned the Silverliner 4s, so another favorite of mine would be the AEM 7s. Wheeling 302 asks, do you have a favorite Norfolk Southern Heritage unit? And if so, which one? I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's the 8102, the Pennsy one. Do you have a favorite Northeast Corridor Railroad? And if so, which one? Of course I have a favorite from the Northeast Corridor. It's the railroad that built it, the Pennsylvania Railroad. Flowey the Flower asks, where do you get all your information? I'm assuming he means for the documentaries. Most of the time, it's usually from the federal reports of the accidents, if I can at least find them. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and even the ones I do find, namely the ICC reports for like older incidents from like the 60s or the 70s, the quality can be pretty poor and hard to read, which sucks, but it's something you gotta expect with older reports like that. But yeah, if I can get my hands on a federal report, that's where most of my information comes. And if it's a really old accident, like from the 19th century, I just look up historical archive websites where I can get expert testimony on what happened in those incidents. It's hard, but you know, I'd rather use anything but the mainstream media reports. That's why I don't do recent crashes, because 99% of the time, the mass media, like Fox, CNN, or whoever, I don't really care, they all have no idea what the hell they're talking about. And what's your favorite train company? Well, I've already mentioned, if fallen flags count, I've already mentioned one of them, the Pennsylvania Railroad, but another favorite of mine would be the Reading Railroad. Burnsy Rail asks, will you do more British train wreck documentaries? Definitely, stay tuned, I'll see what I have planned. North Penn Steam Productions asks, what is your favorite steam locomotive running for excursion service today? Well, that's soon going to be 2102, but at the moment, I'm going to have to stick with, I don't know, 611, Strasburg 90, those are some of my favorites. What train crash do you recognize the most on any railroad? I guess he means what railroad do I recognize the most on train crashes? And I hate to say it, but it's Amtrak. Epic Pants probably has the most important question of all time. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
Ashley N asks, when did your interest in trains first materialize? Well, pretty much since the very beginning, when I was like 3 years old. Jolly Green Jeff asks, do you do model trains? Well, yes I do. HO to be precise. Train Raves asks, what's your favorite restaurant? I don't really have that much of a favorite when it comes to restaurants. One of my favorites is Longhorn, and then you got Outback Steakhouse. And what's my favorite food at that restaurant? Well, it's simple. The steak! New York strip, to be precise. Nick Hill Suriaram, probably butchered that. He asks, which do you prefer, the big boy or 844? Don't shoot me, but 844. 4014's overrated. ABK2K3 Aaron Coughlin asks, what is your favorite Northern class? Doesn't matter if it's scrapped or still around. Well, I assume he means 484 Northern, so that'd have to be the Reading T1s, the T-Hogs. You planning to do the Royal Palm Wreck? I've never heard of the Royal Palm Wreck, so I'll have to look that up. Favorite classic car or plane? Now, I'm not that huge into cars, as some people are. And I don't know if this counts as a classic, but I've always liked Crown Vics or any vintage cars from like the 40s and the 50s. And for favorite plane, classic planes, it'd be they'd all be warbirds, namely mostly warbirds, such as the Russian Yaks, the IL-2, the Spitfire, and if we're talking airlines, the L-1011 TriStar. Duck Rails asks, did it hurt when you stepped on that logo in the Chatsworth train collision documentary? A little, but not as bad as I thought it would, as much as I thought it would. Will you write Station Joke Incident, the 1895 Paris crash? Ah, the Garmont-Parnasse incident. Yes, I've gotten requests for that a lot, so I'll have to do a video on that at some point in the future. Did you take my fudge stripes? What fudge stripes? I never saw any fudge stripes. Nikolai the Tanker Husky asks, what are your thoughts on geared steam locomotives? You mean like Shays? Aw, they pretty.
The blood red.
Jinty asks, what is your favorite LMS engine? Probably the Ivret class tank engines, just because of their unique shape. Mitchell asks, what camera do you use? Please refer to earlier in the video. What game consoles do you have? I have two consoles in particular that I use. I have an old Xbox 360 and an old PS3 that a friend of mine gave. I don't use them that often because I'm more of a PC guy. PC Monster Race. Prepostero Sprack asks, do you ever fear you will run out of good stories to tell us? Not really. I don't think I'll ever cover every train wreck in my lifetime. Seam Bodline, I don't know if you go by Sean or not, but I'll just say Sean Bodline, whatever. He asks, what is your favorite NS locomotives? Probably the SD40-2s, the Cyber Zombie GP38 high hoods, as well as the SD70 Aces. Which ones do you like better, Aero 3s or Silverliner 4s? Definitely the Silverliner 4s. D. Coleman asks, can you remember the worst PC issue you had on any of your software and what was done for it? The worst PC issue I've ever had was when my motherboard fried itself when I had came home from my trip to World War II weekend in Reading, because when I came home, the computer was off, which it should have been on standby by the minimalist, whatever. When I touched the bottom of the computer, it was hot. Like, I almost burnt my hand. And so I unplugged everything, let it cool for a while. And then when I went to plug everything back in and try and power it up after it cooled off for a while, smoke poured out of the exhaust vent. And I was like, oh, crap. So I unplugged everything, took off one of the panels, and yeah, that motherboard had a nice big burn mark on it, and it stunk really bad. Thankfully, the hard drive, which was pretty close to the burn spot, was intact. It's actually in an older computer right now, but I had not lost anything from the motherboard toasting itself, but I'm still wondering how it happened, because computers always have like a little sensor that detects if the computer is getting really, really hot, and it'll shut the computer off automatically. So something must have something must have screwed with that sensor, and it didn't shut the computer off like it was supposed to. So I don't know, maybe a power surged from that storm that happened when I was at World War II weekend. Who knows? Train Boy asks, are you going to see Reading 2100 when she's in Steam? Absolutely. Bryce Atimanda asks, if you have any pets, what are their names? Well, I have two sets of pets from two different houses. My mom's house has two cats, a tabby named Tabitha, and a mask and mantle named Sammy. At my dad's house, there's a mask and mantle named Forbies. I know, it's a weird name, but whatever. And a German Shepherd mix named Honey, who's absolutely adorable. I love that dog. Do you have any model trains? I have an ever-growing collection of HO models, so yeah, I definitely have a lot of model trains. Are you friends with Crafty Fox? I didn't even know about Crafty Fox until he or she left that comment on my Nabizagit Runaway documentary, so I don't know them personally, but yeah, I'll just leave it there. John Doe asks,
What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
what do you mean? African or European swallow?
Huh? I don't know that.
Who do you know so much about swallows?
Well, you have to know these things when you're a king, you know.
Aerophiles asks, what are your top 3 favorite whistles? Pennsylvania Railroad 3 chime, Reading 6 chime, and the N&W Hooter. What are your top 3 favorite horns? Number 3 would be the Canadian tuned Nathan K3L. Number 2 would be the Nathan P01235. And number 1 would be the Leslie S2M. Nate Craven asks, what is your favorite music album? Probably A Moment of Stillness by Stellar Drone. Do you find interest in Has Been Hotel? I've never heard of them. What are some of your top rail fanning destinations? Well, those include Wyomissing Junction, which is right by the Do-Si-Do, Sinking Springs, Duncannon, and just recently, Horseshoe Curve. Matt Caparazzo asks, where else in the United States would you live outside of Pennsylvania if given the choice? I don't know, either Utah or Maryland. Have you ever considered working for a railroad entity, Norfolk Southern, Amtrak, SEPTA, Strasburg? Yes, I have. I have recently applied to the Reading and Northern. I'm waiting to hear back from them, but I am definitely considering SEPTA as well. Strasburg, I would love to do, but considering how far they are from my house, it's kind of not likely. Amtrak's out of the question, and Norfolk Southern, that's kind of a last resort, especially since they're only hiring out of mainly Allentown and Harrisburg because they're so desperate for crews. And even if I were to go for NS, they'd probably lay me off within the next couple of weeks because PSR, and let's face it, with the way they've been going right now, who would want to work for them? Jeez. They've got great crews, it's just their higher-ups, namely Squires, is a complete and utter buffoon. Should we keep Republic Rail Transit or work to privatize it? I don't really know where to stand on when it comes to that issue, so I can't really give an answer on that. Leopon Team Productions asks, can you look at some smaller accidents like ones from Maryland and Pennsylvania or something? I'll definitely look into that. I've actually had one incident planned where it wasn't even a train wreck at all. It was when a keystone was sent down the SEPTA Kingwood line by mistake. I thought that'd be kind of like a little funny side video. So yeah, stay tuned. I might do similar smaller incidents. What do you think of the T1 rebuild project? I'm a very strong supporter of the T1 Trust, and I can't wait for it to be finished. Who's your favorite Girls on Panzer character? Definitely Yukari, because she's my frickin' spirit animal. Right down to the tank knowledge and the messy hair that never seems to go away. Elijah A. asks, what scanner do you use? I use a Undyne Bearcat 75 XLT. It's a really good scanner and it definitely gets the job done. South Florida Rail Fan asks, favorite Amtrak 50th anniversary paint scheme? I'm gonna have to go with 100. I just like that dark blue livery it got. Makes it invisible for late night rail fanning, but whatever. Personally, favorite video? Again, that's definitely the Nabizagit Runaway. But another favorite of mine would definitely be the Hinton one, which was my original favorite. Train? Train? What train? Where? Where? Splatoon Trains fan asks, What is your favorite Western Railroad? If Fallen Flags count, the Southern Pacific. BNSF or CSX? BNSF, definitely. What's your favorite Thomas character? That would have to be James. Bit of a spirit animal of mine, and he's got that rockin' theme in the classic seasons. Ambler Malahan asks, ever heard of Warrior Cats? I actually have. That was actually a book series I was really into as a kid. Could you make it Engines of BNSF after the final episode of Engines of SEPTA? Probably not, as BNSF's not really my forte, because, well, we rarely get it up here unless it's on one of the NS oil trains, 66E and 67E through my area, so probably not. N&W 1218 asks, will you ever visit the Virginia Museum of Transportation? Yeah, in the future, definitely. Mainly to see you, 1218. AEGCT Games asks, are you currently in a relationship? Yes, I am. If so, with whom? A lovely girl known as Stonewolf Gamer on YouTube. Let me tell you, this girl has been the light of my life, and I don't know where I'd be without her. We're also high school sweethearts, being together for over 4 years, and before you ask, yes, I did get her very slightly into trains, but she's still a bit of a newbie at the hobby, so there you go. TrainFan3767 asks, hi, love your videos. Favorite N&W steam locomotive? Definitely either the A's or the J's. I really can't choose between the two. Would you railfan in North Carolina? Well, North Carolina is down here, and where I live in Pennsylvania is all the way up here. But I may consider it in the future, so we'll see what happens. Favorite locomotive and least favorite? I'm honestly running out of favorites to choose from, so I guess another favorite of mine would be Pennsylvania Railroad 7002. And as for a least favorite, if I had to choose at least one, it would probably have to be the ES44 DCs. They look like every other GE, they're not that special, and from what I've heard from crews, they suck. Ken Mason asks, what's your opinion on Virtual Railfan? Really nice channel with a lot of cool guys. What's your favorite cam? Definitely the horseshoe curve one. Will the Kingwood line ever see service return? At this point, who the hell knows? Because I certainly don't. Bradley Allen Lively asks, what was the longest train you have seen and when did you see it? Well, back in May 19th of 2021, I saw probably one of the biggest 39Gs I've ever seen, and probably the biggest I've seen so far. He was over 22,000 tons, 18,000 feet, and had 298 cars. In this video here, which was when I caught him at Pottstown, yeah, he was struggling to make track speed. I've probably seen bigger trains that I don't remember, but that one has always stuck out to me for the amount of cars he had. Like 290, that's like nearly 300 cars. Like, holy crap. I felt especially bad because, you know, as he had cleared me in Pottstown, I was thinking to myself, please don't work Reading, please don't work Reading, please don't work Reading, because if he were to come out of Reading after finishing work there, that's a 2% grade at CP Center, just outside of Wyomissing Junction. That's a pretty steep grade, so they would need to really push the engines hard to get out of there. And sure enough, I heard him get his yard instructions to work at Reading, and I was like, oh boy. Sure hope the conductor got a good workout during that trip, working Spring Street Yard in Reading. Top Gun Goose asks, what's your opinion on the C39-8 getting scrapped, and what are your favorite YouTubers? Well, it is sort of a shame that one of them just recently got scrapped, 8211, but then again, that thing was dead for so long, it was only a matter of time. It's a shame, but, you know, it happens. Things don't last forever. As for my favorite YouTubers, I've mentioned quite a few of them in my 7-year anniversary video. But some of my favorites I like to revisit include Electro Boom, Markiplier, Bowtime Gaming, Dita, Cinemassacre, who actually lives not that far from me, Arthur TV, Photonic Induction, Bright Sun Films, Daz Games, Kipke, and Ranzar. Alright, holy crap, we're already in an hour into the video, so I think this is a good place to stop. I know I didn't answer everybody's questions, and I do apologize for that, but hope you enjoyed this video. I'll definitely announce when I'll do another one of these again, so take care, and I'll see you next time.